Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait from Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. And we have a guest today who we haven't seen for a while, Mr. Brendan Deso, the chair of the St. Albans Town Select Board. I should note that, Brendan, I know off air I gave you a little grief. We haven't seen you for a while. And in a recent interview with Bruce Cheeseman on air, I think I gave you some grief. But that was then, this is now. But good to see you again. And hopefully from here on, we'll see you at least on a reasonably regular basis. Again, yourself, any official from the town, with or without the city, we're easy, but good to have you back, and congrats. Huge news for you and your wife, your first kid arriving just, I should know, we're taping this show on Wednesday, September 29, so baby boy's, what, about a week old or so?
Yeah, he was born at 3:40 a.m. on Monday the 20th.
Wow.
Elliot Richard, 7 pounds, 12 ounces, and a full head of hair, and he makes his mother and I proud every time we look at him.
Wow. Well, I guess your life will forever be changed. Huh?
Oh, definitely. You know, I've taken a couple weeks off. I'm trying to do as little work as possible from home, and you know, I've just been focused on enjoying this time with my wife, and it's been a religious experience, to say the least. And I want to thank everyone at Northwestern Medical Center for the care we received.
Yeah, my kid was born at NMC. They did a great job with my kid long ago.
Well, Doctors Tremblay and Sullivan, Dr. Tremblay saw us through, and he had a vacation when we delivered, and Dr. Sullivan took over, and all the nursing staff, they were phenomenal. The Family Birthing Center is an amazing place to have a child, and you know, it's just another good reason why you should want to live, work, and raise a family in St. Albans. My wife and I are really grateful. And I'm not just saying that because she works in the HR department at NMC either.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, great experience for sure.
I've got some tennis history, as you know, with your in-laws, Pierre and Marie. I got to think they're pretty extremely psyched these days as well, I'm sure.
They are, yeah. Their first grandchild, and, you know, we're really happy to be able to experience that with them. And, you know, we're looking to book a trip to Canada. We're, going through the testing protocols, and we just got the little guy's birth certificate. Because, as you know, a lot of their family still lives in Quebec.
Quebec City area, I think, right?
Right, and her my father-in-law's family's all in Chicoutimi. He's got a brother in Montreal. My brother-in-law's in Montreal. He's just graduated college. And, my little guy's got 3 living great-grandparents in Canada. They can't cross the border to come see us, so, we're looking at Columbus Day weekend or Indigenous Peoples Day. It's Canadian Thanksgiving, so it might be a little too early for us to take the trek, but that's what we've got targeted now. Yeah,
boy, the border, that's one of the many issues I had written down. Boy, I guess the latest, they keep extending it month to month. I guess now officially October 21st. Boy, you can be sure a lot of legislators, officials in border towns on our side of the border just not happy about this ongoing situation.
No, and it's incredibly frustrating in the fact that we can go there, but they can't come here. We would have had, several guests come over to see our little guy, and they would have followed any testing protocol that would have been in place. Many of them have received their second dose of vaccine and, are lining up for their booster. And I think it's a real failing on the part of the federal government, but it is what it is. We're not making those decisions. We've lost, over 600,000 Americans to this virus, and, whatever they're doing to protect us, I guess we have to take it in that context. But it is
certainly
frustrating.
A hit. I mean, we're a border county, obviously. It's certainly, usually, and back in the good old pre-pandemic days, you'd go to Walmart and you'd see, I don't know, maybe 5% of the license plates from Quebec.
Yeah, TJ Maxx was always, you'd always hear some French in TJ Maxx. It affects more than just St. Albans. There's campgrounds in Alberg and West Swanton that have just been, emptied out the last couple summers. And you drive through Rouse's Point and you just see all the sailboats on the side of the road, and it's, it's a sign of a dark time. But there's, at least I and my family we count ourselves lucky that we haven't lost anybody to the virus yet.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I kayak a lot. I have to keep a couple of kayaks near Kilcare and kayak frequently out to Burden Island. It was so weird to go out there on a few occasions, not even one boat in the inner marina, which typically would be mostly Quebec-based boats.
Well, I know Chuck Lowe and everybody at the St. Albans Marina have had some record summers the last couple of years as they continue to grow their business and rent out
as the
slips.
border class, has that hurt Chuck and his partner? Did that hurt those guys a bit too?
I think when I had a discussion with Chuck, it was like 15, 20 slips they felt that they might be out. But, they're consistently growing their slip rentals every year.
So they had a good summer.
Yeah, I haven't talked to them in a couple of months, but
Oh.
I'm thinking Bayside and the marina both had a good summer. We worked really hard. Our public works and parks departments worked really hard to keep the Bay Park bumping as much as possible all summer.
I liked a lot of time in the Bay Park. I thought you did, whoever's decision it was to have music hooked into the Thursday farmers market. I caught just about every one, but obviously a great way to get some people there. That struck me as a great decision.
Alan Mashtier, our public works director,
Yeah.
and our parks and facilities manager, John Montague, work really hard. John works incredibly hard to book good acts. We've had some
Yeah.
pretty good names down there. We've had people that a lot of us haven't heard of before that all sound great. And, Alan and I actually had breakfast at the Green Mountain Cafe that's moved down to Lake Road
Right.
across from Mill River Brewery now, and the old Hen House or Linda's or whatever it was before that, and they're making a good go of it there. And we had some Bay residents come up to us and actually buy our breakfast, and our question was, is the noise a little annoying? And they said, no, keep it coming.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of people approach us and say, it feels like an urban big city feel down in our bay for the first time in a long time. I've said before, my grandfather, when I was growing up, every time we drove by the park, it was almost empty. And he'd say, it wasn't like that when I was a kid.
Right.
He lived on Dunsmore Road just around the corner, and I think when he was growing up, it was his responsibility to get down and stake a spot at, 6 o'clock Sunday morning.
Of course, the history, which most folks know, but maybe some don't. Of course, I was the St. Albans Bay State Park for
For a
many
long time.
years, and the water quality issue came up, and I guess Kilcare and Burden Island became more important to the state, so they pretty much concentrated their efforts on Kilcare and Burden Island, and the town cut a deal, and I think the town's done a very good job with the Bay Park. Nice craft fair last weekend, looked like that went pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, every event seems to go off without a hitch.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to growing them. We're building our base of events, and we're going to improve them every year. The Great Race this year was our first running without the Chamber of Commerce as the director, and our Public Works and Parks departments did very well running the event. We had a professional timer there helping us with that infrastructure, and it's been a great summer. Bay Day was the same day as the Great Race, as always, and that was awesome. We talked to every vendor that came, and the only request we had from any vendor was that we get potable water supplied to the Stone House, and Chevalier Well Drilling just drilled a well for us. And we're going to run that.
Really?
So we're working on it. There's we're running a new power service to the Stone House to allow for more vendor hookups. We know what we've got, and we want to put it to good work for us.
Speaking of the Stone House, of course, going back to Civilian Conservation Corps days, cool structure. You're still trying to do, more renovation of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That building could use probably $1 million to $1.5 million to
Really?
get it to where it could be.
Wow.
We're biting it off as we go. We had, as Walmart was built, we received, I think it was a $125,000 or $150,000 donation from Jeff Davis that the select board, I think it was the first select board I was ever on, placed that money in a restricted fund simply for the Stone House. And we've tried to bite off as many projects as we could with the money we had on hand. The new power services being one, the new well being another. We've replaced we've refurbished and replaced some doors and windows. We feel like we've got the building pretty weather tight. And now everything that we have left to do, the roof and the inside's going to be incredibly expensive. We included a $1 million request, over $1 million request in our earmark application to Congressman Welch, along with the Bay Dock, and we didn't get traction with that, but there's always something to look forward to with the Bay. We're really excited about how well the project that we did this summer at Cohen Park's been received. We've rebuilt a lot of the trail network at the town forest. We're looking at the parks ordinance now, and we're going to create a parks policy separate from the ordinance to help us be a little bit more fluid with the changes we need to make to provide the level of service that we need to keep our parks open year-round. We're looking to partner with, I think, Mill River Brewery potentially, and I know that we've got some meetings potentially off the books with SASA to talk about doing some skating, some public skates, and maybe even setting up a temporary rink at the Bay Park to allow SASA kids to have some more ice time, and there would be some public use element to that.
At one point, the old Public Works garage site with the old salt shed, or one of the
Yeah.
sheds here, you were talking about maybe putting some ice in there. Is that still under consideration or not?
As long as we're using the former public works site as a staging ground for the new town hall construction, we'll
Right.
probably have to
Probably
keep
wouldn't
that.
work.
Right, but, you know, we're still determined to find a public use, a recreation-based use, whether it's a boat launch or even in the interim before we get, you know, the permits and planning, because we know that that area is very shallow
Yeah.
and would require some dredging.
So is that right? If you were to pull off another boat launch there, you'd have to do, it's just too, and again, another summer of low lake, what, about 94.4 right now, feet above
Yeah.
sea level? So you'd have to do some more dredging if you were going to turn that into a boat access?
And that's a guesstimate on my part,
Wow.
just as somebody that's spent some time in the bay.
Yeah.
But I know
No, I'm
now
sure, I know it's shallow.
we could do a lot of things that could become a staging point for fishing derbies. You know, they could launch from all areas of Franklin County and, you know, kind of center the reporting around that area and have
Yeah.
a large parking area. We could have a canoe kayak launch in the interim.
You could certainly, because as we talked before, I mean, this summer, it was a July 4th weekend, one of the weekends, maybe more than one. I get down to Kilcare a lot, and I had never seen so many trailers parked alongside the road by the totally SRO boat access on Hathaway Point
Right.
Road. I mean, it was not a good situation, obviously.
We need another one.
Yeah.
We need it. It's you know, it's a need for our community, and we recognize that. We're starting to have conversations with the state.
Yeah.
We've had some off-the-record conversations with high-ranking people at, you know, Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife, and the idea of the project's been well received. But when we figure out exactly what it's going to entail and what the costs are going to be, I imagine there might be a little pushback. But you know.
And again, as you said, now kind of a staging area for the new town hall, which I go by every day. Went by it a couple of hours ago. That off to a good start, construction-wise.
Knock on wood, it seems to be off to a good
Still
start.
pretty much site work, whatever it takes before the actual building
Yeah.
starts up.
Yeah, and we've got a really good team of professionals that we've hired, and they're
How
leading it.
big a town hall, Brendan?
It's 13,000 square feet.
13,000.
Yeah, if we were to have renovated all 3 floors, you know, including the basement of the current town hall, we would have operated out of about 9,200.
So this would be a good third bigger or so.
Yeah, and our site plan envisions a potential office space expansion further to the north if needed in the future. So
Yeah.
we're building it larger than we need. We know as it
Makes
fills, we've got
sense.
room to expand.
And we'll talk about growth in the town for sure coming up.
Absolutely.
So and they'll go through winter on that, I assume?
We hope to be moving in, you know, May. We hope to be in May.
Well, I got to think the staff at town hall is probably looking forward to that day pretty much, huh?
You know, very much so. We actually just had the, you know, light bulb over our head moment of why haven't we bought HEPA air filters for that building? You know, they're so cheap to buy at Lowe's or
yeah.
Home Depot. So our public works director went down and snagged a few. And if you do visit town hall, you'll notice that it smells a little bit better inside. The air
Yeah.
quality's improved, but we definitely need to relocate this top-notch team we've built to a facility that's, you know, that they deserve. You know, our stormwater coordinator, Emily Sherrington's working out of a cubicle made out of plywood.
Really?
And it is what it is, but she's working out of a cubicle made of plywood in our boardroom.
Really?
If you come, you know, if we open our meetings back up to the public, and anyone's able to attend, you'll notice that, you know, we've got a $85,000 a year top-notch engineer who's one of the foremost water quality municipal employees in the entire state of Vermont, working out of a cubicle made out of plywood in our boardroom.
Wow.
And
You getting any outside money for her salary? Is that all money from the town for her?
So that's her salary is funded entirely. Her salary and benefits are funded entirely by the stormwater utility, which is
Okay.
run as a separate entity from town
Gotcha.
government.
Gotcha.
And I'd like to speak to why we decided to create a utility versus just raising the money we needed by property taxes, and why we needed the money in the first place.
And the city, I guess, has done the same thing. I think they started
have.
that ahead of you guys.
Yeah, and they just raised their fee, their ERU fee this year, I think, to be a little bit closer to ours. They were lower, but I think now they're relatively the same. I think actually if you because we base everything by per square foot of impervious surface, and I think if you try to equate the math to per square foot, I think ours is a little cheaper even than the city's now. But we're $50 per 3,500 square feet of impervious surface. Every home is just flatlined at that $50 rate. So if you're just a homeowner, whether you have 7,000 square feet or 2,000, it's a flat $50. We needed to raise about $500,000 to $600,000 a year in annual revenue to fund the workload that was handed down to us by the EPA through the MS4 permitting process. We've got some impaired watersheds, being Rugg and Stevens Brooks. We've known about it for a while. We waited through an entire Trump administration to see if the EPA would change its mind and that if we'd be able to get a little more breathing room, and we didn't. Now that the Biden administration's here, and it seems like this is a mainstay, we know that we have until, I think, 2034 on one front with water, with flow restoration, and then with phosphorus control, I think we have until 2035 to really make some progress. So what you'll see is we'll be in areas that have runoff issues, and we'll be building gravel wetlands is a lot of what it boils down to, and that's to stop too much water from flowing to the bay too quickly through these impaired watersheds, and it's to soak as many pounds of phosphorus into the ground before it reaches the bay as possible. And we know that, you know, by 2035, if we've met every single goal that's been laid out by the EPA, the bay's still not going to be perfect. This is a multi-generational, you know, process, and we're taking the first steps, and we're doing it with as many, you know, the stormwater utility allowed us to call it a fee, not a tax. So the school district, which I get is still funded by taxpayers, pays into it. I think Collins Pearly Sports Center's bill was $6,300 before their credits. Farmers are paying in at the same rate you or I would. We have the largest agricultural credit of any stormwater utility in the state of Vermont, but they're still required to prove that they're following best practice per the ag department. And we also sent the state of Vermont a bill for almost $80,000 for all their roads in the interstate. We sent the railroad a bill for, I think, almost $20,000, and the railroad doesn't pay tax to anybody. We know that.
Curiosity, have those bills been paid? Have you
Absolutely.
Really?
And money's in the bank.
Interesting.
We've collected, I think last I heard was over 90% of our annual revenue.
Really?
Anybody, I think, over $1,000 or $2,000 worth of cost has the option of paying quarterly, like we do with our tax bills.
Right.
You know, we did this primarily to capture those state and, you know, otherwise tax exempt properties, you know, into paying into their fair share of what it's going to cost to clean up these waterways. We know that if we raised 5 or 6 cents on our grand list, you know, an average homeowner, you know, say if you've got a $300,000 house, your bill would have gone up about $150. By doing it this way, it's only $50.
Did you get much resistance from residents about this new fee?
Very much, but as Emily and Corey Parent and the town manager have worked to educate people as they've asked what the fee is and why it's required, a lot of folks who have, you know, reached out, you know, almost vehemently angry, have left the office feeling satisfied and more than willing to pay the fee every year. We know it's part. We wouldn't be doing it if the federal government wasn't making us. That's the bottom line. But you can also qualify it by saying it's the start of the process of cleaning up the bay. And if we're ever going to really do it, this work has to be done. And we're really lucky to have hired Emily Sherrington. She helped run the South Burlington stormwater utility for a few years, and she left South Burlington to come here because she wanted the challenge of starting a utility.
How many people applied for that job?
Several. Yeah.
So you feel like you got a very good person for that job?
I have no problem bragging that I think Emily is one of the most qualified municipally employed water quality experts in the state of Vermont. Wow. She has looked at plans that the town has hired experts to do over the years and torn them down and rebuilt them way better.
Really?
We've had meetings with other municipalities that we've had water quality projects in the works for, and she has put the engineers on those projects to task. And, you know, we feel very well represented every time she's in a room on our behalf. You know, our area, you know, St. Albans town, the city, we're all very lucky to have her on our team.
Back to the town hall for a moment, and again, most folks in the town are well aware of this, but again, Now, the town, what's the price tag on the new town hall?
It was, if you add it all up between the land, the pre-development costs, the
Yeah.
architects, the engineers, it's a hair under 5 million.
And again, we're talking no property tax money
No.
for that? LOT, the local option tax over a number of years, the
So-
bond payment will deal with that.
We're still building up our cash down payment of $2 million. We should have that
Hmm.
on hand by, our quarterly payment. By the time our quarterly payment in February comes in, we'll have that on hand and we'll be able to use it, which will line up really well with the timeline for the project's completion. And then we're gonna borrow $2.5 million on a 15-year note, to be paid entirely with, local option tax dollars to be received.
Huh.
And we felt very confident in doing that because, in our first year with the local option tax in place, it was fiscal year 2016, we received $723,589.79 to be exact.
Huh.
Last year, FY21, we received almost $950,000.
Oh.
The first quarterly payment that we received for this fiscal year, FY22, was a record for that quarter. We know as the town's population continues to grow and as more people come to purchase things here, you're seeing Haddad Subaru is being built. There's rumors out there that Camping World is coming to town. Press releases have been issued. TC's RV. TC's RV has sold to Camping World, is my understanding. And that's more than just RVs. That's a lot of camping supplies. So if they do, $1 million a year in sales, the town will receive $7,000 after the state takes its 30% cut of that 1% local option sales tax. So we know that if we continue to grow at the rate we have the last 5 years, 5 years from now, that revenue will be about 1.1 million. The town hall debt service for 15 years is about 200,000 a year, a hair over maybe, depending on the interest rate. So we know that once that's locked in, the growth in this revenue is quickly going to eat it. And we also know that there's no other real obligation specifically assigned to this other than, pedestrian infrastructure and, hopefully water and sewer if we can figure out a way to work with that. We've also got roughly $2 million in American Rescue Plan Act money coming our way that can be used towards water and sewer and
That was on my
that
list as well.
infrastructure.
Again, that figure is how much?
Hair under 2 million is my
Really?
understanding.
And you've got some time to figure out what to do with that money.
There's a limit on it. We learn more every day. New guidance comes out from the federal government on how it can be spent. We're focused on using it for a water and sewer related investment. We were so, really surprised and joyed by the fact that Swanton partnered with Highgate and that bond passed, and Swanton said they would be willing to allow Highgate to extend its village infrastructure up to the airport.
Yeah, big project, one of the
Yeah.
big project for Franklin County. Yeah.
And Swanton was so willing to use their utility as a public good. They've got capacity in their plants
Yeah.
and the ability to serve, and they wanted to serve even if it was outside of their border because they knew that any growth in the Highgate Airport would bleed back into Swanton in one way or another. There'd be, if we get the type of growth in the Highgate Airport that we've heard could happen,
Yeah.
there will be people buying gas and, food and whatnot in Swanton, building homes in Swanton. So, the Swanton Village trustees and their select board having the foresight to being open to working, at par with Highgate to just get that infrastructure up there and see what happens. And then, the vision of the Highgate voters to approve that bond a couple weeks ago, it empowered us to want to work with Swanton. So we had a brief meeting with their trustees at a trustee meeting. Carrie Johnson and I attended on behalf of the town. And we agreed that we would work with Swanton's engineering firm that knows its infrastructure really well, Aldrich and Elliott, and we would see if there's an area of town that could really be benefited by extending Swanton's infrastructure into our locale. And if we could, we would partner with them to pay for that expansion and hopefully grow our grand list.
You're talking about obviously just particular sections of the town. I mean,
well, it would be what makes sense, right? And we don't know, there's these things called decentralized sewer systems. We always think of a plant that has to have a direct discharge into a waterway in case of overflow, but there's also these, what they are essentially are large mound systems that can service, thousands of gallons worth of sewer capacity. And that's our main issue up here is sewer. If you look at Tractor Supply, they've got a big mound system.
Yeah.
So there was the idea of maybe purchasing some property near our northern growth center and near where Swanton's already starting to see some commercial growth naturally, even with septics and drilled wells. You know, they've got the Gagne Brothers garage that just built on Bushy Road right next to Mother Hubbard's. They've got a church. Things are happening up there. Maybe we could partner to help our growth center, established growth center, continue to grow, and maybe help the town of Swanton create a southern growth center in that area on 207. So,
well, speaking of growth, big issue in the town, and again, as has been reported here, and I guess in the messenger. But anyway, as of the 2020 census, St. Albans town now the largest municipality population-wise in Franklin County, just edging out the city by a little under 200 people, I guess.
Yeah, we're at 6,988. The city's at 6,877. So just over, 111 people.
And that probably wasn't. I mean, I think anybody who thought about it knew that would happen at some point.
At some point, yeah.
Were you surprised it happened with 2020, or?
See, we never really looked at it as like a thing that we wanted to see.
Yeah.
You know, in our mind, the most important thing is that the region continues to grow and that our grand list grows in a way that allows us to keep our tax rate stable.
And again, Franklin County knocking on the door of 50,000 people.
We're getting close.
Just under, according to the 2020 census, just under 50,000.
We're getting close, and I mean, we're seeing it. The town grew by 16.5%. We grew by 989 people in 10 years.
Wow.
Since the start of the millennium, we've grown by about 35%. We've gone from a town of 5,000 in the year 2000 to a town of 7,000 in the year 2020. So the town's changing. There's more traffic. You see that. Our infrastructure's changing. We've needed to build, new garages and whatnot to keep up with it, and the voters have supported it because they know why we're doing it. We've seen some other really good growth around the county. Georgia is knocking on the door of 5,000 people.
Wow, that's big town.
They grew by 330 people, a little over 7%.
Which would put them in fourth place behind the town, city, in Swanton. Georgia would be fourth, I guess.
They're fifth, actually.
No, fifth. Who am I?
Fairfax grew by 729 people.
Fairfax is ahead of Georgia.
Fairfax grew by 17% in 10 years. They're just over 5,000 people.
So the top five. Sorry, Fairfax.
Well, Fairfax, they're led by someone that was on our planning commission and represented us at NRPC. Sarah Hatch was just hired as their new town manager. They're geared up to take the next decade on really well. The story of St. Albans is pretty evident in our growth and our population shift. And I was just on the internet today, and I knew that we were having this chat today, and I wanted to really try to qualify how it all has played out. So in 1890, that census had St. Albans before
there was just one St. Albans at that point.
We were at almost 7,800 people. And then by 1900, we had separated. I think it was 1896 that the city was incorporated.
So. Yep.
And in 1900, the city had a little over 6,200 people. The town had a little over 1,700. 1920 rolls around. The city grew to almost 7,600. The town shrunk to a little under 1,600. And then by 1960, the city had grown to a little over 8,800 people, and the town had only grown to 2,200. Then it started to really shift. The city, and I know it'll sound like I'm spitting seeds out of sour grapes, but the city in the last 60 years has seen a population decline of over 1,900 people. They've shrunk by about 22%. The town's grown since 1960 from 2,200 people to almost 7,000. We've doubled twice. We've grown by 217% in 60 years. And from 1960 to 1970 alone, we grew by 42%.
Wow, that's really significant.
And it's just evident in the fact that, do we see that growth if the city doesn't have a thriving downtown? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's hooked into some of the stuff going on in the city.
But does the city have the ability to execute and pay for the TIF and have full storefronts without a neighboring town surrounding it that's growing like we are? I don't think so. There's a duality to it. We need each other. we need to work together if we're really going to continue to grow and to capitalize on these investments we're all making. I mean, the city's made some significant investments in the last 10 years.
For sure.
It's evident in their debt load. I mean, city voters have invested, 50, I think the active number is between 55 and 60 million dollars in debt if you include the wastewater and water supply utilities debt. The city of St. Albans has a higher debt per capita than the city of Burlington right now. They went out on a limb to really try to make this area thrive. The town's growing, and in some ways because of that, and our growth, will continue to be good for the city. I mean, every town resident that builds a house, relocates from another part of the state or country and builds a house in the town, and goes to, Jeff's once a month and Mimo's once a week, they're paying local option tax dollars into the city's general fund.
Yeah.
And just like, if the city attracts, a new business by redeveloping the Fonda site, and those folks decide that they're going to build a house in the town, that's grand list growth for us.
Yeah.
We need each other. And I did watch Bruce's interview, and he had wondered, as someone who hadn't been around the town hall for a little while, if our efforts with the city were still where they were maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it was a little hard around the time that we made the decision to transfer our policing services contract to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, that was a hit for the city there.
That was a tough decision for us too. And I tell
Sounds
you,
like that was the money. I mean, it sounds like, Brendan,
It was
from
a money
earlier interviews,
decision.
you thought City PD did a pretty decent job covering the town.
Chief Morris Lamoth is one of the most qualified law enforcement officers in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
Him leading that department, we would have loved to work with them.
Pretty much a money issue.
It was all money. It was a business decision.
Given that, how do you think the Sheriff's Department has done in its first months patrolling the town?
I tell you, every time I'm on the road, I seem to see one of their cruisers.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with coverage. They're working hard. They've got really, really good people there with Sheriff Langevin and Captain John Grismore and everyone up and down the ranks. I don't know if you've met their new canine that's about to just officially certified, I think last week, Mac.
No, really? Nope, haven't
Wonderful
done that.
wonderful big German Shepherd. He's a little saint. Love petting that dog.
I assume, do you get together with the sheriff once in a while, as you did with
the town
city?
manager? Yeah, so the sheriff comes and reports to us on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The town manager's in regular communication, and the sheriff sends us updates on anything abnormal as he needs to.
From the public, any particular reactions from the public, whether this is better, worse, or any comments from the public?
We're actually looking for opinions on that right now.
Yeah.
The Police Advisory Committee is putting out one of its semi-annual surveys. It's the first one. You can find a link to it on the town's Facebook page, and if you would like to take it without having to be connected to the internet, you can call Town Hall and ask to speak to Corey Parent. He's the staff member leading the Police Advisory Committee, but we're always looking for opinions and ways to improve. And
what was that, Brendan? A three-year contract with the sheriffs, or
it was a 3-year term with 2 option years to pick up.
2 option years.
So it was a 5-year contract with 2 optional years. But I will say, the city and town's fire departments work together to host a commemorative event for the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
Mayor Smith and I sat next to each other in Taylor Park and delivered remarks with both of our departments, along with representatives of just about every other department in the county present. I can tell you, at that moment, I didn't look at Tim Smith and say, I disagree with you on water and sewer. I don't like you. I don't want to be here. I looked at him and said, hey, you're a good guy. I've learned a lot about what it looks like to be a good leader in the community from you, and I'm proud to be sitting next to you in the center of our community, sharing this experience with our fire departments. And our public works departments continue to work well together, and we continue to utilize the city's recreation department, and the town continues to pay the city to equalize rates for our residents. And I've got no complaints on that front.
Speaking of recreation, community swimming pool, another big project under construction. You, of course, were a supporter, as I recall, of the town going in. Are you disappointed that, again, with that vote, it was a very narrow vote with townspeople not wanting to jump in with the city? City decisively approved it the first time around, and then again by itself. You disappointed the town didn't jump into that?
Well, I was just happy to see the record turnout we saw related to that vote. I get it was I think it was a presidential primary year, and a lot of people were there to vote for Bernie Sanders, and that helped us get more votes for the project. I think it failed by like 32 votes.
It was a tight vote, yeah.
But you know what? It got the community together and talking. It got a lot of people to give a lot of opinions, and that pool vote wasn't just about building the pool 50-50. It was about building the pool 50-50, and in exchange for that, the town would have became 50% owners of the entire Hardack recreation area with the city. It would have been the first major financial partnership and a co-owned entity with the city and town, and I thought it had the potential to bury some hatchets that would have, helped us with water and sewer, to be honest. And, that didn't happen for us. The voters made their decision. And, we immediately moved on to the town hall because of a lot of the feedback that we got, when people were coming in to vote.
You were just trying to do too much? There was too much going on?
I had probably 100 people tell me the day of that vote that they would have voted for it if we weren't operating out of an old schoolhouse that needed major repair.
Really?
They said if you tackled the town hall and we had that responsibly figured out, we would probably look at recreation amenities.
Yeah.
So we knew that was our next area. To focus on. We were just wrapping up the new public works facility, which is being utilized incredibly well by our team, and now we're building a town hall after seeking voter support. And I think we had 4 or 5 articles across 3 different elections. And
voters made it abundantly clear they wanted the new town hall to be in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and then the final project, we were always nervous that the first few questions, I think it was $65,000 to start pre-development work, to start scoping the project. And then it was $200,000 to purchase the property and another $200,000 to continue pre-development, the architectural and permits.
Yeah.
And then we figured when we got to the $4.5 million question for construction that it might be a different break on the vote.
Yeah.
The voters surprised us. They came out and they voted for it 2-1.
There is, all right, 2-1. Very decisive approval.
Yeah, I mean, we felt grateful. We feel grateful. Our staff is looking forward to moving into their new digs.
I bet. Any hope for some good use of what will be the old town hall come spring?
I hope so. I don't know that it'll be that quick. I think we're going to have to seek out the right partner. A lot of folks have said, well, why not turn it into housing? The septic system on that building would accommodate maybe 2 bedrooms worth of capacity. I think it is.
Septic's a big issue.
Right. So there's the idea of maybe it's an old schoolhouse. Could we partner with a community child care provider to maybe locate some child care in the Bay? There's a lot of people that live in the Bay Area with kids. NCSS runs Project SOAR out of the old Bay School. Do they need a spot to locate maybe some part of their campus, right down the street? Could we partner with them and see that building refurbished? Could we see the basement being used for storage of town items, the second floor being used as office space by a community business or nonprofit, and the 3rd floor turned into a bliss room auditorium like space because we know that's the old auditorium area? There's a million different ways to look at how we could use that building, but it'll be a community discussion, and I'm sure there'll be price tags associated with every option, and we'll have to weigh that out, and the voters will get the final say.
So back to cities. So you feel city-town relations, you feel like are in decent shape these days?
Mayor Smith and I had breakfast at the St. Albans Diner maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
We talked about the St. Albans Museum and a couple of other things. We talked, the Sunflower Festival, which went very well. Again this year, kudos to the mayor and everyone who helped in that. And like I said, Tim Smith is still the guy who, in my mind, he's still the guy who grew up, with his father and uncle owning the Cornerstone and loving this community, and became the rec director and now runs FCIDC. And I hope in his mind, I'm still the kid that grew up on North Main Street in Upper Weldon in the city, and then moved to the town, around the time I was 9 or 10. My kid, Elliot, is a 7th consecutive generation resident of St. Albans.
Really?
We can trace him back to his however many great-great-grandfathers to Pearl Street in 1885, before there was a city or a town. I have no animosity towards the city. I commend them for everything they do. They do it with the support of their voters, and I think our strong population growth is evidence that, you know, what they're doing is working for the community. I know they're not seeing their population grow as much as they might expect, but you can see that in the last 60 years, they lost a cumulative 1,929 people.
Wow.
Since they started TIF, they've only lost 41. And that was before 60 apartments on Main Lane were full. So they probably gained a little bit.
Yeah.
So are they rounding a corner? I think so. And I'd like the town to be a part of that. I'd like to partner with them. You know, I would love to, you know, work with the mayor and the city manager to say that the town's going to invest its ARPA money in extending city infrastructure further into the town. City users saw an 8% increase on their water and sewer bills this year, is my understanding. 80% of the city's water and sewer utility budget is a fixed cost. The more town users hook onto that system, the lower those 8% increases will be in the future. It's good for everybody.
Speaking of which, the water, which you're touching on, water, wastewater has been an issue forever. There's no litigation right now, but I'm hearing, again, the affiliation fee still is a concern. I guess what I'm hearing now is homeowners who have been buying houses, in some cases, haven't been informed. I guess there's, is it $1,000 annual fee that's hooked into that affiliation fee?
It's
and I'm hearing that some of the homeowners, whoever they bought their house from, whatever developer, didn't know that. Is that accurate?
There are a few homeowners who reached out this year when they received their annual affiliation fee bill from the city for the first time. They didn't know what it was.
Had no clue.
And I'm going to do my best to explain it because, quite honestly, I don't think a lot of people in St. Albans know what the affiliation fee is or how it's applied or who pays it.
Sure, you're right.
The affiliation fee was put in place by the city to try to capture some revenue to the city taxpayer in their general fund based on water and sewer allocation. So I pay it at my house. I won't say whether or not that's under protest, but I pay it. I hooked onto the city's water line that they've got 2 water mains that run through my front yard to the city. I hooked onto one of them.
And sewer also?
Yeah, there's a sewer component to it too. I personally just pay for water because I don't have sewer service. Okay. I live right next to the water treatment plant on Lower Newton.
Oh, really? So just water in your case?
Right, and it's I pay 12 cents per 100, I think it is. It might have gone up to 14 this year. The cumulative bill on water and sewer this year is 32 cents per 100. The city takes your grand list value as determined by the town, applies at 32 cents per 100, just like a property tax, and you get a bill for it around this time of the year. And if you pay it, when you pay it, it is deposited into the city's general fund and is used like property tax dollars. And I'm just saying that as an explanation. You know, I was on the board that decided to not appeal a decision about the town's standing in water and sewer, our suit over the affiliation fee.
And that was one of the last court decisions that the town did not have standing?
Right. And no court ruled on the merits of our case. Yeah. Because, again, I mean, I'll say that you'd be hard-pressed to find another example of a utility provider or a neighboring community sending a fee that's based on assessed value that looks and acts and is spent like a property tax to another community's property owner. It'd be like Green Mountain Power saying, you know, for the right to being hooked up to having electricity, you have to pay your service bills, because these affiliation fee folks pay their affiliation fee every year on top of their quarterly service bills. And I will say 32 cents per 100. The town's tax rate that we impose to imply all of our services is 40 cents this year.
So we may be heading back to
I'd have
more
no
litigation.
interest.
Are there any, I know you were talking, I know made a reference to Bruce Cheeseman, the former selectman who I just talked to. I know at one point, I think I mentioned this in my interview, going back when he was on the board, he was so confident at one point that the town and city were going to finally cut a deal, which of course didn't happen.
We've been close.
Any talk? Do you ever talk to the city about it? Is it kind of a
we had some meetings in February. We reached an impasse.
So this issue just seems like it's one of those issues that never is going to go away.
You know, we've all inherited adversarial positions from our predecessors. It's hard to shake that. I have no issue with the mayor. I have no issue with the city manager. And I, for one, would not vote to take the town back into litigation against the city over the affiliation fee, whether I feel it's right, wrong, illegal, or immoral, or whatever it is. You know, my personal feeling, I don't think should bleed into this because we work so well together on other fronts.
Yeah. And that shouldn't be lost in the shuffle.
It shouldn't.
City and town do well on a number of issues.
Right, and you know, this is the one that for several generations we haven't been able to shake.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, you know, maybe another generation of leaders away, people are going to get in a room and they're going to say, hey, you know, when a new home or business is built in the town that, you know, is hooked on to city-owned water and sewer infrastructure, it helps the city water and sewer user, which is just about everybody in the city, by spreading out fixed cost increases to a larger base. And, you know, I've asked the mayor and the city manager, can we work with an economist to quantify what, you know, every new 500 homes in the town means to the city's local option tax? Can we build data that says, you know, if the town and city can work together to create X number of dollars of growth or X number of homes worth of growth, the city will see, you know, a certain return in its local option tax. And I think, you know, maybe a generation or two worth of leaders down the road, you'll see people start thinking that way. But again, I have no interest in taking the town back to court with the city. I think I can speak on behalf of the entire select board when I say that. We're all a new generation of leaders still. I feel I'm the old guy on the board, and I'm 24. You know, I've been on the longest, and
still, I can only assume at least one of the youngest select board chairs in the state, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really neat feeling to be here for the third year in a row and to be able to work with you and to speak on behalf of the town to the press.
Brendan, talking about all the growth in the town, and you've talked about, you know, kind of laid that out pretty well. Concerns about that? Do you ever think the town's growing too fast that, you know, whether that means more staff or, again, you've got your stormwater utility coordinator person, do you get concerned maybe about that growth?
I think if we manage it as we have in the past and work to keep our tax rate as level as possible, you know, we can't stop it. You know, the only thing the town could do would be to make zoning more prohibitive. We could make it harder to build, and I don't think that's right. I think if people of any background want to locate here, it should be affordable. And it's up to us to manage, you know, how we rank our priorities. You know, did we raise $600,000 a year worth of revenue on the backs of the state of Vermont, the railroad, and taxpayers and other payers? Yes, we did. Was it to finally begin the work necessary to meet goals set for us by the EPA related to water quality? It was. So we focused there. You know, we've leveraged the local option tax to buy us, you know, $10 million worth of municipal buildings. The town hall will be geared to grow into the future, and it won't raise property taxes a nickel. The public works facility was $4.2 million when we built it. It'd probably be all of $6 million now.
And again, all out of local option tax.
We got a $376,000 grant from V-Trans for the new salt shed, and we had some existing impact fee dollars that we had saved over the years. Other than that, it all came from the local option tax. It wasn't, no property tax money went into that. Actually, I take that back. We had to use some property tax dollars to pave. We used our existing paving budget within Public Works, you know, to be fully transparent. We used our existing paving money in Public Works to help cover some overages, and
but we're talking minimal property tax money here.
Yeah, we're not, you know, we're talking like probably 1% or some kind of crazy low number, and that building's paid for and it's being used, and it was built to allow for, you know, 50 years of growth.
Speaking of growth, it makes me think of the death of someone I knew very well, Jim Fitzgerald, of course, St. Albans Town's first town manager. Just kind of an indication at that point when that was, that the town was growing, and I guess you went at that point from a town administrator
to a town manager. The voters decided.
Folks like Dan Lundley to Jimmy Fitz, the first town manager. Did you know Fitz well, Brendan?
I got to know Mr. Fitzgerald around the time that he last ran for the House.
Yeah.
And he and Esther were just two of the most wonderful people. And every time I saw Jim at Champlain Country Club in the clubhouse restaurant.
Loved his golf.
He did, and you know, when Esther passed, he put a beautiful memorial bench for her on the first tee.
Right.
And, you know, I think that he missed her so much he went home to her. And, you know,
I'm sure that was a huge blow for Fitz, obviously.
Absolutely. And he was
certainly someone who left his mark around here. Of course, he was in my full-time reporting days. He was always my go-to railroad guy. But again, the town's first town manager had Milton. I'm in Milton pretty often. His name's on the plaque on the Milton Municipal Complex. He was town manager there.
He was.
When they built a very nice municipal building there.
He was in the House in the 70s.
In fact, I think his first stint in the legislature, he was about the youngest legislator at the time. Three stints in the legislature.
He was a Democrat. I think I can remember him saying he worked on Act 250 and he wanted to go back to fix it.
Oh, really? Interesting.
He was a really interesting man to speak to.
Yeah.
Sharp, one of the sharpest people I've ever met. And
sure.
I can speak on behalf of our, you know, young Republican group here. You know, I've got an old Dustin Degree sticker on my notebook here. On behalf of Casey Toof, Corey Parent, myself, Dustin Degree, and everybody else in our little group, we the year that Jim ran for the House was one of the funnest summers we had campaigning, just to have him in the conversation and to be able to learn from him. And we're going to miss him dearly, and our hearts go out to his children and his extended family.
Very nice. Boy, so we've been into the pandemic now about a year and a half. Boy, things, the numbers coming out of Vermont and maybe a lot of other places, boy, pretty scary lately. Some really high numbers.
Yeah, it's...
And the governor getting some criticism, probably especially from some of the Democratic legislators. Hey, Governor, you might want to declare an emergency again, which he seems not at all inclined to do so. Are you comfortable with him not doing that? How do you think he's dealing with this? You've been very praiseworthy of him in the past, I know.
It's easy as an elected leader to see someone way higher up the chain making decisions and to either agree or disagree. And I agreed with him easily as he led the state through the worst crisis we've seen in a generation. And I continue to agree with him now. It's my personal opinion. But when we look at our everyday lives, we're able to move pretty freely. We've got, you know, masking somewhat required in some areas, and it's... I
know you had a mask on when you came into the building. We certainly don't need to wear them here, but are you kind of typically wearing your mask when you go into a store these days?
Well, with a newborn at home, you know, and a wife recovering from childbirth, it's and then I interact with my grandfather a lot. I try to be as safe as I can be. I'm big on the hand sanitizer like everyone else, and you know, I was really grateful that we got through a summer without having to cancel an event in Bay Park. You know, as a municipal leader, that was one of the worst parts of the pandemic, was having to, you know, take those normally joyous occasions and put them on the back burner as literally hundreds of thousands of people around the country died. And it's not lost on us that the almost $2 million coming from the American Rescue Plan Act, that hundreds of thousands of people literally had to die for that infrastructure bill to come to fruition. And it's once in a generation money. And it's incumbent on us to make sure that we spend it well.
I guess death toll in Vermont is now, I think, just top 300, I believe.
Yeah, I think we lost 6 more people over the weekend, I heard. And
of course, you at one point opened your select board meetings to the public. They're still open. Are you still Zooming, or do you? We're
back to a hybrid of board and staff in the boardroom. And we feel like with the lack of air exchange we have in that building and the size of the group with our staff and board fully present, that we can't safely accommodate people. So we're back to Zoom only for the public for the time being as we work through the Delta spike. And, you know, it's getting back to Governor Scott quickly. I tell you, my grandfather's going tomorrow at almost 6 o'clock at night for his booster shot. You know, the federal government.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, the federal government worked really well with private industry to fast track vaccines. It's a miracle in modern science. You know, this is our generation's it can't be equated to a World War II moment, but you saw auto manufacturers go to building ventilators. You saw entire sectors of the economy shut down for months. We're still experiencing extreme supply chain delays and shortages, and our economy is stretched pretty thin.
And of course, the labor shortage issue, just a huge issue seemingly for just about everybody.
It's impacting just about every business you'll interact with.
Yeah.
You know,
But you feel the town has kind of gotten through this reasonably well?
so far, and I think we have a lot of people at the state level to thank for that, including one of our own. I mean, Aaron Creeley's been on our board for a couple years now. And,
right. Local director of the St. Albans office of the Department of Health.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're telling me also an NMC board member too, I guess.
Yeah, we've got Corey Parent and Aaron Creeley are both on NMC's board.
Wow.
This is the best the town's ever been connected to our community hospital. We're grateful. We put a really top-notch team of people together at all levels, from the guys that mow the parks in the summer to all the way up to the town manager. We've made a lot of new additions in the last 12 months with Emily filling a new role. We've had Becky Perrin retire. We thought we'd never be able to fill her shoes, and in a lot of ways we still haven't. But Megan Sherlin relocated here from Ohio, and she's done a remarkable job leading our zoning office with the help of A.J. Johnson. We've got Corey Parent on as our director of operations, and I don't mind bragging, even though he was the best man in my wedding. He's a sitting state senator, really? And it's really nice to have him and his capabilities at our on our team. And
fair to call Corey kind of effectively an assistant town manager?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's, we had a director of administration that was more or less a planner without really any executive authority unless the manager was out. And not having any executive authority until the manager was out made it hard to have it even when the manager was out. So we amended the job description and hired somebody effectively to be the deputy town manager. And we labeled that job description the director of operations. And Corey's done a really nice job of filling that role, but he's had good support. I mean, he's learned a lot. I don't think he'd mind me saying, from like our public works director, Alan Mashtair. And we learn something from Alan all the time. He's got a can-do attitude, wants to get things done, and we work with him to make sure we're doing it in a way that we can be proud of. And we've got a really good team. I mean, we've made new additions in public works. We had Jeff Roby relocate from Colorado to come back to St. Albans to fill a role in our public works team. We just hired a longtime Bay Area resident, Jeff King, to be our fleet mechanic, and he's fit in like a hand in a glove. I'm really, really proud of the team we've built, and I can honestly say that I'm in my third year being chair. When I first took over, the board was a very micromanagerial, board. We were into a lot of decisions that other select boards in other towns probably wouldn't have been in, especially with a town manager. A town manager, by statute, has authority to run the organization and the budget as he or she sees fit to a lot of extent, and the board's really there to set policy and directions for the organization. We were talking, you might remember, back in 2018, I think we had a really spirited debate about how the board had stopped the manager from increasing across the board public works salaries to retain our employees and attract new ones.
I do recall that issue.
We don't have issues like that anymore, Richard. We've got a manager that feels empowered to do her job. We've got a director of operations that empowers the manager to feel like she can take a week's vacation and not have to worry about if London Bridge is going to fall down. We've got a really deep bench now, and we've got a staff that I think has a really strong morale, that feels empowered to do their work. And it allows the select board to be able to sit back and see big picture. And we're making steps this year to make sure that it stays that way. We've asked the staff to give quarterly reports to the select board in writing, and maybe in the occasion, in the case of a special project, verbally at a board meeting. But we're mandating regular reporting. We're going to allow people to do their jobs. We're going to take the data as we receive it, review it, and make changes if we really need to. And I think that's an effective, board staff relationship. And I've been really proud to be part of the transition from, micromanaging, who gets paid what per hour in public works to, allowing the town manager to do her job and just inform us after.
And Brendan, on that note, we got to go. We covered a lot of ground. Sounds like a lot of stuff happening in the town.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. Thanks for coming on. I trust we'll see you down the road.
Absolutely.
Brendan Deso, the
Thank
chair
you.
of the St. Albans Town Select Board. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Thanks for joining us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time. And thanks to producer Albans.